Shabbat Shalom. Jacob, in our portion this morning, the part that's there but we didn't read, but the beginning of the parsha where he's fleeing his childhood home, And back then it wasn't like now where you have the parents who live in Chicago and one child who lives in Denver and the other on the West Coast and they move around every few years. Right? Jacob was Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim. He was a simple man who dwelt in tents. So this was a big change. And we know he wasn't just choosing to do it, but he was fleeing from his brother Esau, who was seeking his life. After Jacob went ahead with the help of his mother and stole the blessing from Esau, his older brother, because their father was blind and unable to see who was before him. So he's running away all alone. And by the way, our parsha is called Vayetze. It's usually the first few words of the parsha, what give the name to the parsha. And often, somehow, it seems to convey what the parsha is about. Vayetze means, and he went out. And so he's going out from everything he knows from his childhood home. And it says he's leaving Beersheba, which is literally the 7 wells, right? And these are the wells that Abraham dug and Isaac dug again after they've been stopped up. This is their childhood play. This is where their family's home. And he's leaving that to go to Padan Aram or Haran, similar place, probably in modern day Turkey, quite a ways away outside the promised land where his mother's family lives. You can imagine how he feels. We hope he's feeling bad about some of his actions, distressed, pained about having fooled his own father and his brother, not knowing when he's going to come back, and more than anything, feeling all alone. And we come to this second verse of the parasha after Vayetze, Vayivga bamakom vayalen sham. He alighted upon the place. He came upon the place, and there he slept. And so it's that night, of course, that he has a dream of Jacob's ladder that has such an important place in our tradition. It's that night that he receives that inspiration that's going to carry him through the next 20 years and all the way into what we read this morning when he leaves. 20 years is a long time, and everything that happened there. And so what happened that night? Where did this dream come from? Vayivga bamakom. So the Midrash says, and it becomes Talmud, that Vayivga, to come upon, to alight, in this case means he prayed. We understand why he prayed, because of what he was going through. Mina Makim, we can imagine, as the Psalms say, from his depths. He prayed from his depths. He prayed to God for help, for guidance, for a sign that it was going to be okay, and he wasn't going to spend his whole life away from his home, his whole life away in exile. And in Jacob's world, everything was very dark at that moment. And the Talmud says that it's right then, in his aloneness, that the Ma'ariv prayer is born. This is when the evening prayer is born, through this prayer from his depths to God. And to remind you of some of the words of the Ma'ariv prayer, the first beginning of it, we bless God who brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opened then the gate, who opens the gates of dawn, right, the next day, who rolls light before darkness and brings day to night. Right, the idea that even after night comes day. This is what Ma'ariv is all about. And we also, Ma'ariv is a prayer of Hashkivenu, spread over us the shelter, the canopy of your peace, remove from us sword, distress, plague, starvation, all the things that we fear, even more so in the nighttime. And this is literally nighttime. He's going to sleep, but it's very much nighttime in his life as well. And more importantly, what is the place that he comes to, that he alights to? He alights to Hamakom. Hamakom means literally the place. And so what place? Well, according to our tradition, the place where you find peace, the place where peace abides, the place that we all need to turn to when we're all going through our times of distress, through our times of difficulty. And it's not just the place of prayer, the place of the divine, but it's a specific place, a place in the core of who we are that we only reach through the most intense prayer. The Tselem Elohim, the image of God. Where does this come up? When we're in mourning, what do we say? Hamakom yinachem etchem betoch sha'ar avalei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May the place comfort you among the remainder of the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Our tradition to love so many words, right? Where the tradition, how thick is our Siddur? But when people are mourning, we just have one sentence for them. And that's the one sentence you have to say. Everything else is commentary. But you're supposed to wish them to be comforted from that place, the place that Jacob discovered, that place of peace when you're in mourning and that brings comfort. And that place only comes when you push everything else aside and you go inside. Maybe that's what you say to mourners, because when you're in mourning, you're desperately trying to reach the person who's passed. And you only find that place when you push everybody aside and you realize that you and the departed, at some level, there's a place within you where you are one, where you're the same. A place that is infinite and eternal. Same place where the Midrash says, also Hamakom or Bamakom, when Abraham lifts his eyes from afar and he sees the place from afar, the place will be the place of the temple, the place where the Shekhinah dwells. That's the place within us, outside of us, that Jacob finds, that Abraham sees from afar. And on one hand, of course, all our prayers are trying to reach connection, right? And the Talmud talks about all the other prayer services. The morning service is a service of praise, of joy. What we just did this morning, contemplating creation, it's associated with Abraham. It's a service where you go, you look out into the world and you say, what a beautiful world I live in. Sometimes you also argue with God and say, it's not such a beautiful world I live in. Look what's happening to our people. Look what's happening to this. But we're speaking in the world. We're talking to God. We're trying to find gratitude. And then the afternoon prayer, that's Isaac, and it's attributed to a moment in his life where he's hearing that on the camel coming from far away is his future wife, who he's never met before. He's thinking, oh, my life is about to change. I better go meditate for a while and try and get my head straight. And so he goes to meditate. And at that moment, we say the mincha service was created. Because in the middle of your day, when you try and sit down for a moment of prayer or meditation or connection, whatever you want to do, you're trying to process your day, you're trying to process your life, you're trying to find a little bit of peace within it all. But then there's an even greater way, and that's the evening service. And that's the way of reaching out when you've got nothing and all you can do is reach out with everything you've got and try and find. And that's when you find the makom, the peace, the temple within. And so Jacob falls asleep, and then he has this dream of the ladder. And the dream of the ladder is the expression then of that place. What does the dream of the ladder tell us? Well, there's angels going up and down the ladder, and God is at the top looking down. And so it's quite a cryptic dream, really, but it's meant to bring comfort. And why does it bring comfort? Well, all the commentators agree that it is about comfort, but they ask, well, what is it about? What is it really saying? So some say, well, it's saying all of life is interconnected. There are divine messengers going up and down everywhere, all times. We can't see them, but this world is replete with meaning. Others say, well, the messengers were reporting back what's going on in this world of ours that's so challenging, right? Just this week, the hostages, the synagogue firebombed in Australia, all these things, and we think, well, where's God in all of this? Just as Jacob was thinking, I'm all alone, I did this terrible thing, what's going to happen to me? And so he saw these angels taking bits of information up, and then what are they bringing down, says one of the commentators, bringing down the power of salvation, bringing down something that helps us do good in the world, feel courage and hope and faith, and then do what we can to try and remedy the situation, to feel solidarity, to come together, to heal our broken world. Others say, well, it's just telling you all of life is a ladder. And even all what you got to do is hold on. Even though it feels like you're falling off the ladder, if you hold on, you eventually reach the top. And famous Midrash goes on to say that each ladder is another nation that was trying to destroy the Jewish people. And it was saying, you're always going to make it to the next stage, even when it feels you're not going to. You can always make it up that ladder. But all in all, it was saying that Jacob was not alone, and that there was a purpose to everything that was happening, and he had to climb the ladder of his soul. And so this is the beauty, this is the lesson of what happens in this episode in Jacob's life. So alone, desperate, guilty, worried what he's done, worried where he's headed. And that this alighting on Hamakom and the dream gives him 20 years worth of strength, because God doesn't appear to him in any way, according to tradition, for 20 years as he's fooled again and again and has to go through all those hardships. And we read today how he feels about it. In the heat of the day, in the cold of the night, I had to do all these difficult things. All until next week, when finally he has another revelation, and then he has to fight an angel. Doesn't become that much easier. But that becomes one of our modes of prayer. This becomes our mode of prayer. That for all of us, when we feel we're in depths, whether personally or looking at our world, our nation, the Jewish people, Israel, and feeling the distress, that we have to find that abode of peace within, the dwelling of the Shekhinah. Try and find that place which is infinite and eternal and gives us the strength and courage that we all seek. Shabbat Shalom.